Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Replacement Level Podcast. It's been quite a while. Last week I missed both episodes actually. Chris ran by himself. Both two guests, Jack and who was the other guy?
Ted, our buddy
Ted,
Ted up
right?
in
Ted's first
Minnesota.
wrestler. Two big guys we love having on the podcast. Obviously, you have them again, but we got a big episode today. Pretty sure we're live on YouTube right now on the Sportsnaut account. That's exciting. Um, because today we got a fun one for you guys. Today we actually have a post deadline episode, post trade deadline episode for you guys covering thinking about having yesterday, but I actually went out to the stadium last night, Yankees game, which clearly did not go the way I thought it went.
So you
Five
were
to
not
two
a good
wasn't
luck
exactly how
charm.
I thought.
You were not a good luck charm for them.
No, I Yankees are, I think, 3-6 when I go to Yankees games this year.
Oh my gosh.
And they're 3-6, so I think I should just stop going to Yankees games. Um,
Yeah. Stay away. Give your team a chance, man. Like
well, we're hearing from a Mariners fan right now who's about the same record, fourth place. Correct me.
Mariners have neither
Um,
won nor lost games when I've attended because I haven't been to any.
okay,
Little
okay.
little far away. So,
Well, that's
um,
something. That's something. I'll give you that. But just a little uh, exciting stuff for you guys. So again, today we'll do a little shorter episode, 20 minutes. But it's gonna be just covering everything that happened past few days. It's been a crazy past few days, from minor league deals to just Scherzer, two of the biggest names on the market that were dealt at the deadline. Big haul, and a lot of players moved around, and so a lot to cover. But we're mainly gonna that we thought helped one team or helped teams, or it could just be it was just for a playoff push. A team that's contending, that's looking for another bat or an extra bullpen, go over the top. So other than it just the Yankees stink. Brian Cashman is probably the worst GM in baseball. I ranted pretty much the entire day. The past 2 days have been really stressful. Been on Twitter nonstop, checking every second. The Yankees, all the time, every hour, check in on Teoscar Hernandez. Yankees check in on Jeimer Candelario, and we end up with nothing. He pulled through with is Kenyon Middleton and Spencer Howard, a guy with the 7, because the Rangers decided to. So therefore, we're going to sign him for cash. So we're paying for a guy who's a 7.20 ERA who's pitching 30 games this season. That's the Yankees for you guys. We officially have the
it's
worst
good
GM
to
in
be
baseball.
rich. It's good to have money.
Yeah, it's good to have money. Um, but a lot of it could have just been the luxury tax, to be honest. I think that Cashman was nervous that they would go over the luxury, and if they would spend a certain amount of money at the deadline, I think that's kind of what held them back. I think if they prospects, obviously, they did have a couple of prospects, even a couple of rental guys, Bader, IKF, who are contracts are expiring, and they bait, but that didn't happen, obviously. Uh, yeah, Chris, what about your Mariners? Did for them almost, but nothing much
Yeah,
really.
they were a team that definitely had several players that got leaked out into a lot of rumors and potential trades, but they never really came to fruition. We're talking Logan Gilbert, Teoscar Hernandez, Ty France. None of those guys got moved at the deadline, which for France and for Gilbert, fine, I'm good with. I like them as players, like them as being part of this team, so I'm kind of glad they didn't get moved. On the other side, like I'm really curious to see what kind of a haul the Mariners would have gotten if they were to have moved Gilbert. I mean, we saw the trade packages for Max Scherzer, for Justin Verlander, for Lucas Giolito, guys like that. And Gilbert's younger. He's still on the rise in his career. He's still a controllable asset for teams for a long time. Like the Mariners could have gotten a really big haul for him in return, and that's ultimately probably why he wasn't dealt. Was teams just weren't wanting to pay that kind of a price to get him, and I can understand it. The question now is, Gilbert, is he a front of the rotation, like ace of the staff, or is he somewhere like a number two, like an average to low end number two guy in rotation to a high mid rotation type of a starter in there? And that can be what teams got to decide on how they view him and everything like that. But the Mariners were able to move their closer Paul Sewald and get Josh Rojas, Dom Canzano, and Ryan Bliss. Which, all right, I like Rojas. He's been a pretty solid utility player for the Diamondbacks. Having a bad year this year, but up until this season, he's been a good quality player, guy that you can start probably as a super utility guy, kind of play him all over the field just to keep his bat in the lineup because he's been a good hitter. Not so much this year. Dom Canzano, he's almost 26 years old. He's a corner outfielder, can play a little bit of first base, but there's not really been a whole lot of big league experience with him. And so where does he fit in? How's he going to fit with this team? I kind of thought when they got him, I was like, okay, that may add a little more fuel to the fire of the Mariners dealing Teoscar and dealing Ty France, because Canzano can easily fill in either of those positions. And when it didn't happen, now we're left with, okay, what are we going to do with this guy? He's probably a bench bat. He's probably a utility guy, which is great to have because you need depth. But do we really? Was he really worth trading for? Ryan Bliss, a prospect in the system, could be the Mariners' future shortstop. We'll see how he plays out as he continues to elevate his game and his career throughout the minors. But he could be the top prospect for the Mariners at shortstop position, which is nice considering last season they basically dealt their top two guys in Noelvi Marte and oh shoot, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's the other guy that went to Cincinnati for Luis
Um,
Castillo.
hmm,
Dang it, drawing a blank.
there.
Yeah, yeah. I
Arroyo.
want to say Arroyo, but I don't think that's his
Edwin
last
Arroyo?
name. Um, I can't think of it. Now it's gonna bug me. But anyways, the Mariners are left kind of with some players with not a lot of future guys at the shortstop and third base position coming through the minors. So getting Bliss, I think, is a good move in that part. But Paul Sewald, he's the way I feel about him is he's the closer for the Mariners, but you put him on a team that's actually going to be contending for a playoff spot and for the World Series. For example, we'll just throw out the Braves. He's not a closer on the Braves. Like he would be at best like their eighth inning guy or maybe their seventh inning guy. He can definitely lock down an inning or two and be a high leverage arm in there. But on a quality team, he's not the guy. I mean, he still has a little bit of issues in getting some of those final outs in there. He's just not entirely dominant. He had a very dominant, I believe it was 2021 season. And then each year after, he's kind of regressed a little bit where he's not quite as lights out as he was in that 21 season. But I like the move they made. It's fine. There's nothing big again. And when you look at the Mariners, what were they gonna do? I mean, you trade somebody like a Kelnick or a Teoscar or a Ty France or a Eugenio Suarez, you're gonna need somebody to replace that, and you don't have anybody in the farm system that you can call up and say, "Hey, you're the guy that's gonna start for us, here and the rest of the season out, and we're still gonna be competitive," or anything like that. Like you move those guys, now we're talking about a Dylan Moore filling in there, a Jose Caballero, or a Cad Marlowe, kind of a situation. It's like, okay, you guys are good, but in Marlowe's case, he's young, he's new. We'll see what we can do with what he can do at the major league level. But with Caballero and with Moore, it's like you guys are probably the ninth best player on a championship starting team that teams are looking to upgrade at, or you're at best you're the utility guy. And if the Mariners are still trying to go for the playoffs, you can't give up those kind of players that are valuable that teams want because you don't have anything in the way of calling up from the farm system and the return you're going to get. Well, it's in like, why am I trading an Eugenio Suarez to get a replica Eugenio Suarez back? Like, why don't I just keep him? It doesn't, unless I'm getting something, blown away, that doesn't make sense. So, and I think that's with some of the other teams that I'll probably talk about a little bit later when we get into talking about the trade deadline here. But it just seemed like some of the teams, guys in like we've talked about with the Yankees, like guys that you want to trade away that are going to bring in the haul big returns, you don't have necessarily somebody that you can replace right away on that and kind of continue to win. Like Aaron Judge. There's a lot of teams that would pay a big price to get Aaron Judge, but he's kind of the guy for the Yankees. And you move him, now what? I mean, you're basically, if you move Judge, you're kind of conceding the season. Granted, we can say that since the Yankees were selling, they're conceding the season anyways. But still, they're not too far out from the third wild card spot. They've got Judge. They've got some guys. If they can get hot at the right time, they could close the gap and theoretically make it in. So you don't want to be too overly aggressive one way or the other in being sellers or buyers. So it just made it difficult. Like, there's not a big market for a Harrison Bader type or a Giancarlo Stanton or a DJ LeMahieu or anything like that. And those are guys that you probably want to move, but there's not a big market for them. And there's not going to be a big return in, moving that guy. Like, oh, great, we moved LeMahieu and we got the, whatever, Team X's number one prospect. That's not happening. It's just not. So, like, the guys that you want to move that can get those are guys that you can't move because it's really going to negatively impact your team and that's going forward. And I think we kind of saw that this deadline. A lot of veteran players were shipped out, and guys that are kind of not so much on expiring deals, really. Like, it was a very active trade deadline, which kind of caught me a little bit by surprise. But it was great to see all the activity and all the excitement. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on the overall deadline there.
So I think that's sort of for teams that are in sort of that tough position because for a team like the Yankees and Mariners, that deep in a hole, when you're looking at the standings and first place, there's no chance that we have no shot of winning the division. So now we have to shoot for a wild card spot. And when there are four teams ahead of you, we're talking about the Rays, we're talking about the Blue Jays, we're talking about in the West, we're talking about the Astros. Not sure who's going to take the West, obviously. They got the Astros and the Rangers are pretty much fighting, and the Angels are also there. So when you got a bunch of teams ahead, the Yankees and Mariners, I'm pretty sure it's more of like we're in a top position because, like you said, Chris, when you're looking at your roster and you're looking at guys that you could potentially move because either they're guys that more a team that's in more contention and that has run to the playoffs, saying like, hey, we can move this guy, he'll help them go over the top. Or you look at it and say like, hey, we have a rental, we have Harrison Bader looking at the end of the year with free agency, so we might as well get rid of him. And like you so sometimes there's a possibility that aspects in the Yankees case that would be Everson Pereira, who's been a guy sort of on the verge of getting in the minor leagues, really showing that he's probably going to be the next man up. But that's just one example. I just think overall for a team that's in this sort of spot, and when you're in that type of position, like Cashman said, not really sure what that means all in when you're in last place with 3 games over 500. But listen, he's got to say something. I think what he said at the conference yesterday, he was saying how the Yankees started, they were sort of in a tough spot because they were partially set well. But once Cashman saw how the second sort of drew him back, like, hey, maybe we should keep it low key during the trade deadline, which obviously bothered me a lot. I thought there was a lot of moves the Yankees could have made, but coulda, shoulda, woulda. And I think the offseason is going to be very. We saw this trade deadline for the Yankees. There's Severino's probably going to be on the move. I think this season is more going to be focused on shedding money and getting rid of the bad contracts that are expiring or the Yankees will be getting rid of. Bader's going to leave. We're seeing is heading out. So there's a lot that could have went down. I think just in the Yankees and Mariners case, there's a lot, but didn't fall through just because of the positioning and where both of these teams are at. But now let's get to important things because both our teams. So let's get to
Yes.
the gist of it. Let's go through the best trades. So I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna obviously go bigger here. One trade that I really liked, obviously we're gonna Verlander. That'll sort of be our last ones. But looking to the trades, I was looking happened everything that went down. One thing that I really liked was the Angels trade. I really thought that the Crone and Randall Grichuk trade was definitely something that helped both sides because you're looking at who need younger talent, and they do have a lot of. They have Zach Veen, who's going to be a star in the outfield in a couple of years. Obviously, you got the Rock much have no chance making any playoffs, so they're obviously going to trade their prospects for, and they'll trade away their stars for prospects because they're one of the what they're just gonna do is look for teams that are interested, and obviously we're both guys that were on the table before the deadline. They're both guys that the Rockies were saying, "Hey, these guys take attention. We can get prospects in return that can help us in a couple of years." So trade was Angels first baseman C.J. Crone and outfielder Randall Grichuk from the Rockies in exchange for Mason Albright and Jake Madden. 30 for the Angels. I'm pretty sure Albright I think was top 15. Madden I think was in the might not have been. But I think Crone and Grichuk were both great additions because you obviously have this year. Crone last year really broke out. He's sort of struggling this year, but he could be a nice DH bat. Whenever he's around, he can play some first. He plays first base pretty well, also, so that helps. And then obviously the outside, that was obviously the bigger name. It's a contact machine, batting 307 this year. Someone that was highly touted. He was getting a lot of calls. I think there was 8, 9 teams that checked in on it. This guy, he can help us down the stretch. So obviously the Angels ended up with him, but I think a lot could happen. I would even say that other teams the Rockies could have gotten more if it was any other team that's willing to spend and willing to give away prospects. They could have even gotten more for a guy like Grichuk who hits well and plays. But really, just a very good move by the Angels. Just move. I think they upgraded first base. I think it's an upgrade for Walsh just because of his struggling. Outfield is definitely a big upgrade. Homered his first game there. Crone also had an RBI single, but really overall for the Angels, I think they really upgraded in several areas, and that really can help them down the stretch.
Yeah, the Angels were definitely one of the most active in buying teams at this deadline. I mean, they also nabbed Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez too from the White Sox to really help bolster that rotation and bullpen. So they're definitely going all in for it. I just don't think they make it. I really don't. I mean, I yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this season plays out for the Angels because if they don't make it, I believe Otani's has an opt out after this year, and I don't know if you caught wind of this during the All Star break, but Seattle was definitely chanting to Otani to come to Seattle, and he says he loves it there. So I mean, anyways,
Don't get too
um,
excited.
I doubt that would really happen. Anyways, I'd loved it, but I'm not. But I mean, if there's great odds out there about Otani going to Seattle, I might throw a few dollars on it just because why not? But for me, the deal there wasn't a deal that I specifically liked. I was like, man, that's a great deal, like a really great deal. Like I felt all the buyers that were there, like your Angels, your Dodgers, your Brewers, the that team in Houston. They
Mm,
all
not
they
to be
all made
mentioned.
some good moves to help make them better and help, I would say, solidify their spot in being in the playoffs. But there wasn't a move that was made that you can say, oh, that puts them over the top. They're now the front runner. Like, for example, the Rangers getting Max Scherzer and Jordan Montgomery. Like, I would really like that if Jacob DeGrom was healthy for them. I'd be like, okay, now you got a 1-2 punch of DeGrom and Scherzer, and then you're going to Montgomery or John Gray or Andrew Haney or Martin Perez or Dane Dooning. I mean, like, that's a really good rotation.
Stacked.
Too many guys for the postseason, but I would say that would be a move that put them as a front runner. I don't feel there was that. Now, the moves that I like is going to be a little bit shocking because it's not getting a lot of publicity and it's not getting a lot of talk. And it's the Chicago Cubs. I like their move of getting Candelero from the Nationals. I mean, Candelero was the best third baseman on the market. He moved from the Nationals back to his original ball club with the Cubs. And I like his move there on that left side of the field with Swanson and him there locking things down. You've got Nico Horner at second, Trey Mancini at first, Cody
Oh,
Bellinger in center, Seiya
Mancini's
Suzuki
out.
in. Huh?
Mancini's out. They got rid of him.
Oh, did they?
They waived him. Yeah.
Uh, okay. Well, anyways, he wasn't doing that great, anyways. But
No.
I still like him. But I mean, I still like the moves that they made there. It wasn't a big deal or anything like that. Like, it's not a big name deal or anything like that. But at the same time, the Cubs were thought to be sellers at the deadline, and their little win streak that they put on right before the All Star break and after the All Star break, I think it was Jed Hoyer came out and said that changed their mind and made them become buyers. And they're another team like I was talking about earlier, like the players that you want to move and the players that we heard a lot about in Cody Bellinger and Marcus Stroman. You're moving those guys, you're gonna get a good return for them, but you're also going to hurt your team currently. And, considering the NL Central has been a crazy division to begin with, and I don't necessarily view the Milwaukee Brewers or Cincinnati Reds as teams that are that much better than the Cubs. I think the Cubs were smart in going for it. I think the division can be had. I think they can do it. I'm not worried about the Brewers. They've got their own issues. They always seem to kind of struggle in the second half of the seasons, anyways. The Reds, I think what may end up happening is the worst thing that could have happened for them was their success that they had, because I think they'll ultimately miss the playoffs, and then that'll kind of hurt their draft position when we come next year's draft. So granted, those are small little things that could negatively affect them, and their future is pretty bright with their farm system they've got and the young players they have in there. They really just need to get some more bullpen help for them to go along with some healthy frontline starters. But I like the Cubs moves. I think it helps make them a stronger team to win the NL Central. And when we had Jack on, we talked about it, and we said, the Brewers is kind of their division. There's not a real team out there that scares them. He said, now if the Cubs don't sell at the deadline, that's a team to watch out for, because they have a lot of veterans there who've been there in the postseason, who've won it, and can kind of help these younger guys, keep them in line and know what needs to be done to make it there. And so I like the Cubs moves at this deadline. A team I don't like that wasn't that, for their trade deadline is going to be our buddy Ted's Minnesota Twins. When he was on, we talked about it. He wasn't expecting like big shocking moves or anything like that, just because they're in a similar situation where the guys that are going to bring the biggest returns are guys that are going to be hard to replace, and it's going to help hurt their team in the short run. But even with that, I still think the Twins should have gone out and made a move. It would have been hard because you're looking at most likely giving up some prospects or packaging some guys with a prospect to get somebody in either the bullpen or to get another bat for them. As it is, I think the Twins are going to be fine because the South Central is the worst division, and the Guardians seem to be sellers, even if they're not going to admit it, but they seem to be sellers. And so it's the Twins division. They should walk into the playoffs, which is great. But I expect them to be a first round exit because they just don't have a lot to kind of compete against some of the other AL teams that they're eventually going to go against. Like, I like the Rangers better than them. I like that team in Houston that gets in that's better than like Tampa Bay. I like Baltimore. There's a lot of teams I like better than Minnesota that I think could go on and actually have a legit shot at winning the World Series. So I'm a little kind of sad to see the Twins didn't make a deal. I especially am sad because right before the deadline, there was a rumor about the Twins being interested in Teoscar Hernandez and Ty France. And I kind of would like both of those guys being in Minnesota. I think they would have been good fits for those teams. I did ask Ted. I messaged him. I said, so this rumor's going on. Like, does that mean like Mariners here are getting Brooks Lee or Royce Lewis back in return? He said, no. And I was like, well, that's disappointing and way to crush my dreams, but it makes sense. Again, I mean, the Twins aren't necessarily wanting to give up some of their prospects for rental players like a Teoscar Hernandez. But yeah, again, great deadline. Rafal, we got to hear who's either your team that you're disappointed in, or trade that you didn't like to see happen?
Before I get to that, I just wanted to know two things. You were talking about the Twins. Uh, they didn't. They were sort of your disappointment. So, I think of the. Obviously, you were saying at least in their positioning it when they're going into a trade deadline where they're in a division that's the worst in the league, and they're thinking like going into the deadline, front office is thinking like, hey, we're obviously contenders to win the division, but other than that, we probably have no shot first round. So then it's like we'll win the division and then have an early exit. So I think what thinking was probably, like I said, well, the division. I think that since the Guardians didn't do much and didn't really do anything to bolster their, I just think it was more of a saying like, hey, we're out of the race. Maybe we'll get a wild card spot. Probably not. Maybe even win the division, depending on how this goes, because it is a 1-2 game race right now between the Guardians and Twins. I think there's 2-3 game separation. Didn't check, but something like that. It's very close. Uh, we're too far out, and we don't have close enough talent to other teams that will make a deeper run in the playoff. I think on the flip side, for the Cubs, like you were saying, with Bellinger and Stroman, I think, but by the time when the deadline came, when they took that huge series before the deadline, took 2 out of 3. I think it was like, hey, we're now at the point where we have a shot,
Hmm.
and getting rid of guys like Stroman and Bellinger, who are both free agents at the end of the year, we might as well hold on to them because at this point we have a shot at making the play. If everything goes well and we do make a deep run in the playoffs, then it was worth it because it happens to be that the Cubs go on a crazy streak, and they end up making a deep run. They might because then they're gonna
Yeah.
say, hey, we have enough talent to make it. So let's run it back with them, and Bellinger and Stroman can really rake it in next year. If that's the case. So my winners and losers, just team. I just want to mention this is not my winner, but I think really huge haul. They obviously Scherzer and Verlander were both left, and they really just their whole rotation completely fell apart just now. The Mets got Luis Angel Acuna brother, Marco Vargas, that was for the David Robertson trade. Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford, both top 5 prospects in the Astros. So they had a huge
Hmm.
haul. I definitely think that's something to note because the can really make an impact and really I can see them being loaded in the next couple of years if all these prospects turn up and they all pan out. They all prospects, and that's definitely something to take note of. But my winner, uh, gonna have to go with the Rangers. I really think the Rangers they did a lot. You were talking about put them over the top. I think that the Rangers were already sort of playing. Obviously, they're in first place right now, ahead of the Astros, and I think that even without getting Montgomery and Scherzer is huge, but I think even if those trades didn't go down, I think the Rangers would have made a good run in the playoffs this year. But now getting Montgomery and Scherzer, they're over the top. Uh, there wasn't anything mind blowing this season. This trade deadline, I knew going in that Scherzer and Verlander would. There was no last minute Teoscar and Hernandez getting traded. It was more just the Mets, Verlander, Scherzer both on the trading block. We're going to trade them. We're too far out of the playoffs. We're not a contending team. Let's trade them. That was sort of the thought process. So everyone knew going in that those two would be on the trading block. But now that they added Scherzer, I think that now we're like, hey, we have enough starting pitching, and our everyone's lineup is clicking, and now that we got these two weapons, now we're ready. Now we're prepped, and now we're ready for battle. They're ready to go to war with whoever. face them, honestly. Really, I think the Rangers have really proved that maybe the Simeon and Seager trades did pan out. It's a lot. I remember last year after the Mariners spent over $500 million up the middle, Seager and Simeon, where they both pretty much had down years, and they both come back and have huge years. So this is kind of showing spent is sort of panning out now. The Rangers are now becoming one of the better teams in the game, and they are the one. And I think I really like what the Rangers did this trade deadline. Losers, I'm obviously gonna say the Yankees. I said before, it was a very fragile. That's how I put it. It was a very fragile 2 days because before there wasn't a lot that they could have done. Like where they are right now, I think they're in a very tough position. Cashman really just a lot going on at the same time because of now and the fact that they're pretty much have no shot at this point, and now it's just a wild card. Now they just have when you're in a spot. I thought about this for a while because after yesterday, I was very upset with how things turned out. I thought that for when I was at the Yankees game, I was just like venting how bad Cashman was, and I just kept ripping on it. But now that I thought about it, and the more that I looked into it, I really wasn't a lot that they could have done because no matter what they did, if they did ending up getting Candelario, that means that they're either giving up or they're giving up a player that and obviously getting Candelario was something that all Yankees fans wanted. Even I want Candelario, but at the end of the day, I just think that there's a lot of could-haves and there's a lot of should-haves for Cashman. He, for him, that was the right decision. Back him up. Maybe I didn't agree at first, but I just think that based on where the Yankees stood yesterday, I just didn't think there was a lot they could have done. There are teams that, in the Cubs case, the Cubs are far ahead. The record-wise, they might be the same, but positioning-wise, they're ahead of where the Yankees are right now. So for someone like that more than the Yankees do, because the Yankees don't need Candelario as much as the Cubs do, because the Yankees are probably in a bigger pit than the Cubs are right now. So you're gonna get outbid by a team that needs someone more than him, more than you guys. So in Cashman's eyes, even if they would go for Candelario, that the other team would outbid them, because like I said, the Yankees aren't going to spend money as of now because of the. But they do have prospects. But I just now that I think about it, I think that it could have been that the bid Cashman. So that's sort of my breakdown of the trade deadline. Obviously, there's a lot of other trades and a lot of other names, jerseys over the past day. A lot of teams downgraded. Some teams sort of mixed up and dumped their farm system or them and revamped it and got a whole new haul of prospects, like the Mets, like the White Sox. They were also big sellers.
Cardinals got some big returns.
But overall, I think it was just a very trade deadline, Chris, like you were saying. I think that it was just a very there's a lot that went down, yes, but there wasn't anything eye-opening that was like, hey, whoa, this guy got traded. Chris, I'm not sure if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, I do. I think there's a lot of moves that were made for teams, and good for them. But there wasn't, like I said, I don't think there was any clear-cut trade that's like, oh, that was the biggest trade. People are still talking about it today, like it's making, the number one thing that sports radio shows across the country or are writing about or talking about. Like I don't think that's the case at all. Like I said, I think your biggest names are Verlander and Scherzer moving, but they're moving to teams that the Rangers are probably making the playoffs anyways. The Astros were probably making it too. So all it did was just help bolster their chances of making it in. It wasn't, it wasn't like, oh, this clearly moves him up to the front. Like I saw some things come up saying like, does the Verlander trade move the Houston up to being the top team or the most team to worry about or whatever? I'm like, no, because one, Verlander hasn't been great in the playoffs recently, and two, they, you know, whatever, they still got a ways to go to, either win the division or make it in. So, good moves all around, but yeah, no big move or anything. I think as long as there's gonna be three wild cards, I think we could kind of see stuff like this moving forward. Just because it's gonna be hard for teams to really that are close, but they're either you're gonna have to decide to go all the way in or not. Like the Mariners, they're now third in the division. They're a few games behind third. They got to beat Boston. They got to leap Boston and New York to make it in. Oh, and Toronto, I believe, to make it in. And can it be done? Yeah, it can. Is it going to be done? What have they
That's
shown
a
you this
different
season?
story.
All the yeah. So I mean, why should Dipoto go all in and trade some prospects to get somebody that's maybe gets us over the hump, maybe it doesn't. But and if it does, great. If it doesn't, this dude better be on the contract moving forward, because if not, then you just bought a rental and you potentially overpaid, and now you're kind of hurting yourself. Um, so yeah, we'll see how things play out here. Like I said, I like the activity from the Deadline. It was fast. It was furious. So many things going through. About players that were going to be dealt that didn't, such as like Eduardo Rodriguez from the Tigers. A lot of other names that came up that
Beast.
didn't get moved. Yeah, yeah. So good moves, bad moves. We'll see how this plays out. At the end of the day, it's all about getting wins, and that is from the players that are actually going to be playing on the field. And looking forward to this second half.
Yeah. So today, I think things could get fun, Chris, with the three wild cards, because there's right now a lot of teams in the AL and NL that are fighting for a wild card spot. So I think things will definitely get wild. One, once we get to the final stretch. For today, that's gonna be a wrap for our post trade deadline episode. Tonight at 9 o'clock, we have a guest. It's not gonna be recorded. Obviously, it'll go up on YouTube and Spotify. This once we get to Dawson, our awesome editor that does everything, along with Allison, who coordinates everything. Shout out to those guys. And yeah, tonight we're gonna have Larry Stone, one of the mayors. We had him on before. Chris went solo for that, but we're gonna have him on tonight. Definitely exciting stuff. And yeah, that's a wrap for today. And make sure to check out Larry Stone's episode once that comes out. That's gonna be 9 o'clock tonight. We're gonna ask him everything about them, from the Mariners trade deadline, account injury, and to Jose Caballero playing some more second base with Colton Wong getting designated for assignment. So that's a wrap for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this live stream. It's up on YouTube. I just checked. Thank God on YouTube the entire time.
Woo.
That you check out our Twitter page, Replacement Level 1. Check that out. And make sure to follow us. Make sure to check out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. That's where everything goes on audio. On YouTube. Then check it out on Spotify. Everything's there. Share it. Send it to a friend and enjoy. Take care, everyone.